Hi, this is Daniel with Unrivaled Investing. Today we're going to talk about Unity Software. The ticker is U. Don't be a knucklehead and confuse it with another Unity company because there's a couple other Unity stocks out there like Unity Bank. You want to make sure you get the right company. So it's Unity Software. It's a new IPO, and I think they are going to revolutionize the world. Not your world, not my world, the world. And I think it could offer really interesting returns for shareholders. The question is the price right? We'll get more into that a little later. Does it have that 10x potential? Why do I think it could revolutionize the world? We're going to cover these questions in this video. So why did Unity get my interest, ticker U? First of all, it's a new IPO. As I mentioned, it's going to be coming out in the coming days. It's fast growing, between 30 to 40% a year. And I think they're going to revolutionize the world. I truly, in my heart of hearts, believe that. So what are we going to discuss? What is Unity? What's their business? What's the opportunity? What's their value proposition? Is it unrivaled? I look at all investments through the lens of rivaled versus unrivaled value propositions. I'll get more into that later. And valuation thoughts. Does this have a 10x potential? That's how I consider all investments as well. Is like, hey, it needs to have dramatic upside if I'm even interested in playing this game. And there's also a free investment sheet, free investment calculator that I provide to you if you click below in the description of this video, where you can see I posted this investment calculator for you to play around with your own assumptions for what you think Unity could do in the future. But before digging in, if you like talking about and you like hearing about potential multi-bagger stocks that can potentially go up hundreds or even thousands of percent, click that subscribe button right now. And if you are already a subscriber, you please hit that thumbs up button. Also, if you want to know what I'm personally doing in any given month, whether or not I'm buying, selling, holding, why do I own these top positions? What's the logic behind it? Exclusive content of videos that I'm making just for the people that go to www.unrivaledinvesting.com. Click on that journey button. Also, if you have a question, a favorite stock, feel free to leave a comment below this video and I'll respond to you. So what is Unity? Unity is a global platform for creating interactive 2D and 3D content. Over 50% of the top 1,000 mobile games were built on their platform. Let that sink in. Like, if you have a gold rush and you're the guy that provides the hammers for 50% of the miners, 50% plus of the miners, you're going to do all right. They're saying they provide the platform for the games, over 50% of the top 1,000 mobile games, the top 1,000 games out there, not just mobile games actually. They use mobile, but that's the metric. But for creating 2D and 3D content, they are the dominant platform. Let that sink in. Over 3 billion associated app downloads, over 1.5 billion unique devices have played games that were built with their tools. They support over 1.5 million monthly active creators. These are the developers that are building this awesome stuff, building the games. And you can see, like, these are, I just picked 3 random ones because they, the screenshots looked interesting. If you go to Unity website, you'll be like, holy smokes, they cover so much. They are creating the 2D and the 3D universe in terms of whether or not you're looking at AR or VR. So here you see Rick and Morty, virtual reality, Pray for the Gods, Escape from Tarkov. These are just a couple of games. Why do creators build on the Unity platform? So first, it's fast building. You can simultaneously visualize and iterate on a 2D and 3D creations in real time. So you're looking at these creations in real time and with collaboration. So you have a team and you're building some awesome setup. You're entering this cave. You got these monsters over here, and you get to work with your team in real time. Like, oh yeah, let's make sure we tweak it like this. Everyone can see it in the same time. Like editing content, editing complex content, like 2D, like 3D stuff in real time collaboration with your coworkers. And you may notice that I put a little demon monster staring over at Excel, like why is the demon monster staring at Excel, is because Excel has been around for a few decades, and Excel, I love the tool, but I use it for financial purposes all the time. The shortcuts are amazing, but the problem is that if I want to collaborate with anyone, it sucks. They still haven't figured it out in decades. So here it is. Unity has figured out how to do real-time collaboration with 3D art, 3D games. And Excel still doesn't have their act together, unlike me being able to easily sense things around. So anything I want to do in Excel, it's always going to be a Google Sheet. So that's why the demon monster is staring at Excel. You are looking at the bleeding edge tools for building in 3D. So if you think we are just on the cusp of more and more 3D content, Unity is going to want to get your attention. You're going to want Unity's, to focus on Unity. Why else do developers use Unity? Create once, deploy everywhere. They are deployed on over 20 different platforms without having to rewrite any platform-specific code. So you're building this cave, you're building what this looks like, and then boom, you publish it. It rolls out on Windows, Mac, Android, PlayStation, Xbox, Nintendo Switch, leading VR and AR platforms. Like, this is incredible. They're building it, so these are the tools that are accepted throughout the whole ecosystem of games. Now, what's more, this is a part that just blew me away. Between 10 to 15% of their revenue is from strategic partnerships. Who are these strategic partnerships? These are the same hardware operating systems, the Android devices, Xbox, Nintendo Switch, game consoles are paying them. What? Like, when you have a tool that's so important to the ecosystem that the ecosystem pays you to make sure they're integrated with you, that's something special. This is a special company. I review a lot of companies, here at Unrivaled Investing. And this, you're going to get, I hope you're picking up my excitement, but you should also be sensing that this is a special company. Now, before you pull the trigger on it, you always need to temper yourself and say, hey, these things are oftentimes baked into the price. Will you get adequate shareholder returns? Because you can have, a fantastic company, but even loftier expectations, and then you get crappy returns. So that, we'll come to that later in the video. So, here it is, mind-blowing that the ecosystem is paying them, so that way there's this integration. But do developers, do these creators, these 1.5 million, this ecosystem of creators, and non sequitur on equators, or an analogy on equators, an analogy on the creators, and having an ecosystem, is that if you have 1.5 million creators, do you think they're just going to switch to another platform? That's just something for you to be thinking about with an unrivaled value proposition. Like, if you have 1.5 million, an army of 1.5 million people, do you think, and they're building up habits using a certain tool set, do you think they're just going to switch to something else in the future? A lot to talk about in terms of unrivaled value proposition. So do the creators, do the developers like it? Here's a great quote from the CEO's letter. I spent a few decades working in games and technology. One of the most enjoyable and surprising days I can recall was in the fall of 2013, when I attended one of Unity's customer events just outside of Vancouver. I expected what one normally sees at these company events: customer training, case studies, a few hero moments where the company shows its latest technology. While this was all there, okay, totally makes sense, I also experienced something very unusual. I watched independent game creators applaud the speakers like they were at a concert for their favorite band. I met creators, people who just a year or two earlier worked in warehouses, as accountants and as teachers, who attributed their ability to work in the game industry to the existence of Unity and Unity's tools. I met a few creators that had gone as far as having Unity's 3D logo tattooed on their bodies in permanent ink. What? I mean, these, first of all, they're creating a movement. These creators are saying, hey, they previously did this. Now you can get a Unity credential, learn how to play with the Unity tools, and boom, You get the tattoo because you love them. You're part of the Unity army. You're unified, unity. I mean, this is incredible. When you have people tattooing their products, like that happens with Harley Davidson. I've seen that with a few others. But like people love the brand. That's incredible to me. But this also reminds me of this incredible deal where Unrivaled Investing, you tattoo Unrivaled Investing anywhere on your body, and I will send you a free $10 Amazon gift card. And plus, if you put it on your face, like ideally right here, then I'll give you a free month at unrivaledinvesting.com/journey. Actually, no, please don't go get the pen ink and start doing it on your head. I will definitely not do that. I'm going to save on my ad budget, and I really don't want you tattooing Unrivaled Investing on yourself. That'd be a bad idea. When in doubt, don't worry about it. Instead, save the money in terms of getting the tattoo and just go to unrivaledinvesting.com, go to Journey. So why do creators use it? What? So I get why the creators are using it, but what is Unity actually selling? Like, so what would you say you do here? You know, what's Unity actually do? And so when you look at the revenue profile, you can see it's 3 different components. The first is operate solutions. We'll get into that in a second. That's nearly 60% of their business. The next component is create solutions, which is a little over 30%. And then the last component we already talked about, which is strategic partnerships, which just is mind-blowing in and of itself. Let's dig into each of these separately. So operate solutions actually has several compartments, several subdivisions. First is rev share and usage based. So for rev share, you're looking at, they have the tools that help games create revenue. So that means, in-app purchases or advertisements. So they collect revenue on a per install ad sales or per impression basis. So as the games make money from their ad revenue, they get a slice of that because they help enable that. They help place those ads when, how long, what ads you should place. Next is the usage, and the usage components and drivers are super duper interesting, where you have first of all cloud-based services like hosting, where using their hosting solutions, you can save up to 29% cost relative to using a public cloud, a single cloud solution. Like, how? That's first of all, that's a cost advantage that they're providing these game studios, where you're getting 30% cost savings relative to if you just went straight to a public cloud. So they're saying it's through efficient scaling algorithms and real-time infrastructure selection across leading cloud providers, their multi-place cloud platform can yield savings of up to 30%. Like, interesting. How is that even possible? Like, how can they get you? How? We'll get to that in a second. What other functions? What are the other usage functions? And like, one is multiplay, where they enable the potential for you to have a game. So you've created this game, you've developed this beautiful game, but now if you want to be able to have multiple players playing the same game, maybe playing against each other or playing in the same universe, that's part of the tools they offer. Low latency. So that means there's no problems if you have multiple people, playing in the same room. They can all operate together. They can all interact with the same 3D environment. You push on something, everyone else can see it. Cheat prevention. There are many, caveats or facets that go with multiplay. It's not just, hey, let's have a bunch of people. It's, you need to be able to have it so that way the environment still works. You need to have it so that there's cheat prevention. And if you want to be able to have multiple players, maybe you need to have matchmaking where you correctly match, like, this person's talent is here. Should we put someone's competing talent like way over here? So you see, there's a lot beyond just, hey, let's just have multiple players at the same time. That's another one of the usage aspects. So they're getting paid based on how much people are using these tools. What are their usage functions? Delta DNA, which is analytics. They talk about build intelligent long-term relationships with players using personalized engagement powered by deep and rich data, i.e., they see tens of millions of players playing these games in real time and getting the data of, like, oh yeah, This is how you get people to play more. This is how you get people to get more engaged. This is how you get more people staring at their phones or playing on their computers, because it's even more addictive. And that's the reason why I love this image. That's the reason why the puppy's asleep on the couch. Nobody's going to play with the puppy because they're all addicted to their games. Like, they're not only selling you the tools to make awesome stuff, they're like teaching you how to like create the drug dealing relationship. Like, oh yeah, and here's how you make it extra addictive. What other usage functions are in the operate revenue? This is, about a little under 60% of the revenue. They have Vivox, which is communication. So another tool that games are like, hey, yeah, let's layer that in, where it's voice and text communication between players. So if you want to use if you want to play a game from like Fortnite or PlayerUnknown Battleground, League of Legends, Rainbow Six, like the communications tool, yeah, that's theirs as well. It was an acquisition that they did, but boom, it's another tool. You want to use it based on how much usage you're getting in the game. That's how much you pay them. So they're as games scale, Unity gets to ride along. If you have a great success, whoop, Unity's going to do well as well. If Fortnite is just incredible and this communications tool is really helpful, boom, Unity rides on it. If it fizzles out, meh, they can still make money, and we'll get to that in a second. What other usage functions? So as we look at operate solutions, like outside of designing the game itself, everything I just mentioned from usage functions, these are critical things you need in a successful game. I mean, in-game monetization, like whether or not the game is going to be profitable. Like, hey, the developers need to get paid. The studio that produces this, they want their money back, plus interest. Ad revenue, hosting. You got to make sure that they have a cost advantage with potentially getting your game set up on a server, so that way it's running anywhere in the world. Low latency, so that way you can have multiple players playing at the same time. We had the multiplayer aspect. That's a tool that they can enable. Communications, so if you want players to interact with each other, which is a big part of building a community of players playing each other. And analytics, so it gets even more addictive. Like, yes, this is the point in the game where people stop playing. Oh, that's a good thing to know. Maybe we need to change it or tweak something in the storyline here. Maybe like, oh, at this point, this is when, when we put advertisement here, like this is really close to the climax of the game, like boom, people are much more likely to just pass through the advertisement, so we should actually move the advertisement over here. This is incredibly valued data that all works together. And when you think of these different components, like, are these want or need? If you're a game developer, do you need these things or do you want these things? These all have implications for whether or not we size up companies as having an unrivaled value proposition. What about Create Solutions? That's over 30% of the revenue. Create Solutions' business model is effectively subscription-based, and it's for their 1.5 million creators. They have different tiers, like premium versus student. But this is the tool for, these are the tools, the tool set for building these massive, incredible environments. Unity is the world's leading platform for creating and operating interactive, real-time 3D content, providing the tools to make amazing games and publish them to a wide range of devices. Real-time. See, here's something that blew me away about real-time. Real-time in VR means the next frame is created in 1/20th of a second. These tools are just so, like, it's so mind-blowing what needs to be created, and that they are the ones that are enabling them. And you can see, like, the creator of Baymax Dream says, I love, how all these tools were here, and Unity is pure creation. Some of the folks from Blizzard, which is a major game house that's been around for some time, I think it's part of Activision. One of the great things about using Unity is that thanks to the speed with which you can iterate, we can very quickly learn what's working and what's not. That gets back to the analytics aspect that I was just talking about. So, okay, I understand what they sell. And I've explained, like, hey, you have these Create Solutions, which is a monthly subscription, for building this amazing stuff. And then you have Operate, which is either, ad revenue share, revenue share or usage based, like hosting the games itself, being able to put it on some sort of cloud infrastructure, analytics, what have you. What's the opportunity from here? And management thinks the opportunity, the total addressable market is 29 billion. This compares to approximately 700 million in sales. That's a pencil. I'm penciling out 700 million based on 2020. So clearly, just a back of the envelope, does this have 10x potential? And of course, like when you're saying you have 29 billion total addressable market and you're at 700 million in sales, yeah, like that would strike me as very likely your business can 10x over time. That doesn't necessarily mean your stock price will, because lofty expectations can weigh down your results. But what do I think of their opportunity? Like, do I actually buy this $29 billion? Like, do they actually, will they actually be able to actually grow that? Like, this company's been around for a couple of years. They're growing 34%. Is 29 billion really that reasonable? Is that likely? And I think it's even bigger. I think, like, I have a picture of Ready Player One here, because I think we're heading in the direction of the Oasis from Ready Player One. Like, where AR, VR, that will be at your fingertips, anyone, everywhere. And they talk about how games developed on the Unity platform recorded over 8 billion hours of gameplay per month in the last 6 months. So that number, I think it's only going to grow. And you see examples where there's article about Apple glasses, where they're trying to import, where they're trying to effectively put augmented reality in front of everybody. Mark Zuckerberg, the Zuck story. One of the stories that I've heard with the Oculus is any new employee at Oculus, and Mark Zuckerberg owns Oculus, or Facebook owns Oculus, is that any new employee, they get a copy of Ready Player One, which is a story about everyone being plugged into a virtual reality oasis, this one big game, this one big universe that we're all plugged into. It's not like a game like, hey, we all need to get points. It's like, this is how people are living. Now, do I think it's necessarily going to be the Ready Player One? Do I think that could be one element, and you're starting to see that with like people going to concerts in Fortnite. But I think there will be multiple aspects to this, like augmented reality. I think, like, for example, with sort of voyeur culture, where people are constantly doing videos, TikTok, what have you. You saw it with Facebook, before that MySpace. I think people are going to be recording themselves 24/7. You can X out whatever you want, or you'll have an AI that sort of will block out what you don't want to be recording. But if you're creating all this data that's constantly recording, or you're constantly interacting with the environment with a tech interface, I mean, this is going to create huge potentials for augmented reality, interesting augmented reality, either educational or fanciful, science fiction, playing Wizards and Warcraft, but in real life, like putting them on your table and be like, whoa, I got some cool stuff over here. It's super exciting, but let's just be real for a second. This is more than just a game. It's going to be a way of life. Like, let's look at the film industry, for example. I think in the next 10 to 20 years, you're going to have a complete revolution in the film industry. Currently, for example, you have server farms with filmmakers slaving away over single frames over hours as they make these edits. Oh, we got to change this and these, like frame by frame by frame. They're making the changes. That's current technology. In the near future, you will have real-time filmmakers edit and review a scene instantly. And that's what you're doing with this 3D art, with the 3D games. We are at the cusp of these 3D games being indistinguishable from reality. And when you have games that look that close, I don't know if it's next year or 10 years from now or in the next 20 years, but it strikes me as a high probability it will happen. The graphics are that good. The latency is that good. When you reach that point and then you can edit these things in real time, you're going to be able to create movies like that. The cost of production goes down like that. So you're going to have so many more movies, so much more talent. And any film studio that does, first of all the traditional film studios, that their business model gets completely disrupted when you can have smaller folks, just like YouTube. Look at all these videos you're watching on YouTube. How many of them are from the major channels? Well, you're going to be seeing that, except with full movies, where it's this small studio. It's like, oh yeah, we put out this Harry Potter equivalent, and it's because they could afford to do so, because they had the tools to do it, and they had the platform to do it. And who's the one that's enabling them? That's Unity. I showed an example, and I think this is just a slice of what could potentially happen with Simone. That was a movie from a few decades ago where Al Pacino creates a virtual model that becomes the actress in several of his movies after he's having frustrations with the talent that he has to work with. And Simone turns into such a big hit that, like, people are like, oh my God, we love Simone. And they think, like, ultimately Al Pacino, like, kills her and, like, what did you do with her? But she was never real to begin with. I think that's the direction we're heading, where you see content that is so realistic, you can't tell the difference between Simone and a real person, except Simone is using, machine learning, looking at the best actors, actresses over the last few decades, and like, oh yeah, this is, if you want to show emotion, this is how we're going to do it. And you could do it like that. This is going to be a revolution in the next 10 to 20 years. This totally strikes me as very likely. And once again, who's the one providing these tools? Any other fields. I think any high-value manufacturing, and you're already starting to see this. And keep in mind, what I'm saying, this is not just pie in the sky. A little under 10% of Unity's revenue, a little under 10% currently is from non-games, like films, like manufacturing, where they talk about architecture and automotive. Where in architecture, it's easier to see, like, oh yeah, this is the flow of how we're going to build this. And while you're building it, you can layer, like, oh yeah, here's the 3D design. This is what we actually have. Like, is there a problem with what we're currently doing? No, it matches perfectly with the 3D design. Like, this is the flow that we expected. Automotive, it's faster new car development, where you can tweak and play, like, oh yeah, this is what we want it to look like. Lifelike models rendered in real time. The faster you can create high-value 3D objects, because you have these tools that easily do it, will create even more objects in the future. So I showed this picture of Volvo, where Volvo's been working with them using augmented reality. Like, hey, what if a moose is in the road? Like, how will the car handle that? And you can see the awesome, cool cars that you'll be building in the future and driving around. I'd love to have a car with eyeballs that wink at me. No, that's actually from one of their games. So clearly a huge opportunity, or at least I think so. Like, management is penciling out 29 billion. I think in 5 to 10 years from now, maybe add a zero to that, maybe a couple. So do they have an unrivaled value proposition? So you have greater than 50% market share in the mobile game space. You have a community, an ecosystem of 1.5 million creators with body tattoos. I'm still waiting on those unrivaled investing tattoos. Not really. Tools that are need to have versus want to have. An ecosystem where the hardware, the consoles, pay them. Oh, and potentially you revolutionize some existing industries like manufacturing, filmmaking, and basically everyday living. I wonder if you have an unrivaled value proposition. Yeah, big thumbs up. Like, I think they have a huge unrivaled value proposition. I think this is a perfect example where I love looking at companies. I think you probably get that excitement from these videos. And when I'm looking at companies, like, it's not about looking for the needle, buried in the haystack, where it's like, what's that one little data point that, oh, now this company is really compelling. Like, it should be so obvious from just reading a few pages, like, whoa, this is an exceptional company. This company stands out. And the reason why unrivaled value proposition is so important is year to year, month to month, valuation changes is what gets most of the noise, creates most of the noise, gets most of the attention. Like, oh, the stock's up 50%. Yeah, that's the valuation change. But over years, over decades, what generates those exceptional returns is consistent growth. And how do you get that consistent growth? How do you get that amazing growth over years? And the answer is by offering something that no one else does. When you have a good or a service that no one else does, that means you're unrivaled. That gives you the right to win. And if you're tapping into a market that's worth tens of billions of dollars over time, you're going to crush it. And so another data point that I haven't mentioned is that, and this is part of the reason why they can have lower hosting costs, lower hosting costs, using a multi-cloud solution, is because they have so much more data than anyone else. So they can say, oh yeah, we've seen over 50 billion data points in a day of how these advertisements impacted, game playing. Well, if that's the case, they can tell you, yes, you can optimize the ad revenue by doing this versus that. If I wanted to compete with them, I wouldn't be able to. I don't have the data to do it. So a big thumbs up on unrivaled value proposition. Now let's dig into their financials, because clearly this is an exceptional company, really stands out. But what do their financial profile look like? And then later, what's the risk reward? So from a financials overview, they have net revenue retention of over 140%. So what's driving that? So that 140% means that your customers at the start of the year were generating 40% more revenue by the end of the year. What's driving that is they are incorporating more and more tools into their solution. Unity is like becoming this umbrella that buys these really interesting tools that then they can layer on with their customers. Like, hey, you need a cool communications tool? We got Vvox. Oh, you need an analytics tool that'll tell you, hey, how you can make your game better or juice your ad revenue? Hey, that's, Delta DNA. So this, not only do they have this organic opportunity, but if they see smaller players start adding solutions that are like, hey, this is interesting. We didn't currently cover this, but this is something we don't do in scale. We'll just buy you. And that'll help accelerate our growth and increase our value proposition, because now you can get everything from us, not only creation, but optimizing your game. I previously did a video on Skills, which is another, esports related, platform. And it would be really interesting to think, like, could you have M&A opportunity between Unity and Skills? Because Skills is very targeted on like the esports and making money on, e-tournaments, whereas they're sort of broader the whole ecosystem. Would it make sense to have the two pieces combined? So then, another component, as you look at this chart below, you could see the net dollar-based expansion rate below, and that's only gotten better over time, which makes sense as they're selling more of these tools. I certainly wouldn't expect to keep it up at that rate. But the number of customers that are generating over $100,000 in revenue has gone up 70% in 2 years. And I wrote on that just because it does create a little question in my mind of, is there a risk that your growth rate does start decelerating just because you're tapped out like the market? You already have 50% plus of the market. And so 70% over 2 years, that's okay. Like, is there really opportunity to keep growing significantly from here? That's a question mark. What about their revenue? And so you can see, each of their cohorts, they start using them and then they expand with them. And that fits with the 140% plus net revenue retention. In 2019, their revenue grew 37%. In the first half of 2020, their revenue accelerated to 39%. Part of that's because of some of the acquisitions they did. But overall, you like seeing charts like this where the annual customer cohorts are increasingly spending their money with Unity. That means it's a product that customers like. When you have things that customers like, you're creating this win-win dynamic. You want sustainable relationships. Sustainable relationships can last long term. What about their cash and margin profile? So they're on track for over $100 million in losses. That's not exactly cash losses, but let's just leave it as that. Will they have the balance sheet to handle it? Pro forma for the IPO, they should have over 1.2 billion in cash. So it's not a top worry of mine. I think they can easily, finance it. One thing I didn't put a bullet point here, but it is worth calling out that they are giving, several $1 million away in stock to various different charities. So I think they're doing the right things with the capital that they're raising. And let's look about their margin profile. You can see, there's a gross profit margin of around 80%. This makes sense to me when you think about pure software solutions like them, where they're adding all these tools, and it's probably, related to customer support and such, that you have this sort of, and the hosting costs that you're paying to have 20% cost of sales. So 80% gross profit margin, that is fantastic. This chart below, this is all as a percentage of revenue for that period. So you'll notice 100% is the same across the board because it's as a percentage of revenue. So around 80% gross profit margin, that makes sense for this business model. You can see R&D is 40 to 50%. Man, that's super exciting. They're investing in the right products to make sure they're the bleeding edge in creating real-time 3D stuff and awesome 2D stuff. So they're in my opinion, they're making the right investments. Sales and marketing, that's probably something that you can get some operating leverage in time, i.e. that it'll come down over time, just as people become even more aware of the brand, and you don't need to have as large of a sales force if the customers are going to you to pay you for new solutions. And then general and admin costs, you'll probably see an uptick as they go public, but over time you should be able to get some scale on that. 20 to 30% is pretty high for that. Maybe you can get it somewhere between 5 and 10%. And so you can see that they've been unprofitable historically, but look, that makes sense. They're investing in their product. They're investing in their value proposition, which from what I can tell has only gotten better and better and richer over time. So what's the right price? So that's the, I'm clearly excited about the company. I think it's an unrivaled company. I think they have an unrivaled value proposition. My value proposition to you is I create these sheets, and you can click on the link below. So that way you can play around like, hey, what do I think the upside downside is? But what's the upside downside for Unity? And is this already being baked in? That's sort of the concern, because you can have, once again, you can have a great company, but it can also be a terrible investment, over several years because it's baked in. If you have even loftier expectations baked in, your results will stink. So, here it is, $11 billion. This is based on what they said that they'll price around 42 from the IPO. Based on how the growth rate that we see in the first half 2020, they're growing around 30-40%. So I put a range here of 35 to 45. Then optimize margins. This is a little bit of art here. If you're at 80% gross margins, you could be able to get some leverage off of sales. You could get some leverage off of G&A, and both of those, and probably over time get some leverage off of R&D. Right now 40 to 50% for R&D is pretty high, but they're investing in the right stuff, creating a strong value proposition. So what is their long-term structural operating margins? And for a company with 80% gross margins, penciling out 25 to 35% strikes me as reasonable. Could it be even higher? Yeah, it could. I've seen software companies that are like 40% plus. So especially when you have 80% gross margins. So this is trying to get a reasonable range for what it could be. Slap on a tax rate, of 25%. And you could see what the net earnings are. You could see what the implied earnings multiple is. This is not crazy town earnings multiple. For a company that's growing 40%, a little sub 40%, for it to trade at a hypothetical optimized margin of somewhere between 50 and 80 times, it's not like completely nosebleed bananas territory. It's expensive. That's the reality of it. Now, what if you wanted to pencil out hey, I'm not a speculator, I'm an investor. I like to think in 5-year periods. That's how I prefer to think, because in any given year, 2020, crazy stuff can happen in any given year. So if you focus on a 5-year period, that makes it easier for you to pencil out what could my returns potentially be. And so here it is. I'm penciling out growth rate between 20 and 30%. Once again, most companies cannot deliver these types of growth rates, but I think Unity is a exceptional company, and so 20 to 30% is really nice if they can do it. And so you could see what that would mean relative to where they currently are, and so that's about 2 to 4 times their current size within 5 years. Okay, and then based on that, you'd see what their net earnings could be, and then also what the assumed multiples would be. This is a range. I'm putting 20 times to 35 times for 5 years out for their profitability. And you'd see on the downside, that's like negative 40%. On the upside, that's about 130%. So it's not as crazy a risk reward as some companies I've covered. Like for example, on 2020 sales, it's like a teens multiple. Whereas, for example, another current IPO, and keep in mind they have structurally lower margins. This IPO, they're going to go for like 60 times forward sales. So this is definitely not the crazy time, crazy nosebleed territory. And that, keep in mind, the IPO I'm talking about is Snowflake, and that's the one that everyone's getting frothy about because supposedly Berkshire, because everyone's saying, oh, Warren Buffett's buying into it. Warren Buffett's not buying into it. You can actually see the filing, and I think it's Todd Combs, one of Warren Buffett's lieutenants, is doing it. But yeah, so I'm putting a range on it. It's not crazy. It's whenever I like to make a big bet, I prefer to have much more limited downside. And so, what do I plan on doing when I'm penciling out downside of, nearly 50% versus upside of a little over 100%? What do I plan on doing? And in order to find that out, you got to go to unrivaledinvesting.com, where you can see what I buy, sell, and hold and why. Exclusive videos where if I have something interesting to say, I'm going to share it with you. And your patronage, if you go to unrivaledinvesting.com, click on Journey, your patronage enables the production of these Unrivaled Investing videos. So if you enjoyed this video, please hit subscribe, hit that thumbs up button, and thank you so much.